Welcome
Biggie.
back to Spotlight by the Intelligence. This is Aaron, aka Air Bear, and I've got with me Nico, aka Odd Panda. How you doing today, man?
Hey man, doing good. Thanks for having me at the podcast.
Thanks for giving us your time. We appreciate it. I am so excited to get to know you and see what you are about. Perhaps you could maybe give us a little intro as to like who you are and what you do.
Likewise, also excited to get to know you. So for me, as you said, I'm Nico. I go by the artist name Odd Panda, and I've been releasing lo-fi beats for the past a bit over 4 years. Yeah, I've been grinding the beats. I've been making music, working with a lot of many artists in the scene, and I made a lot of friends in the scene, which I'm very grateful to have. And it's really become my home. And about 2.5 years ago, me and my friends No Spirit, we kind of got involved in starting a label, and we started more labels along the way. Right now, we have Fortune Cookie Records and Lotus Records, which are basically our main two labels that we're focusing on. And I'm taking care of the artist communication, the A&Ring, playlisting, and yeah, that's basically who I am and what I do.
I'm familiar
And
with those jobs and they are taxing. It's a lot of I hesitate to call it mundane, but it's like playlisting, artist pitching, that kind of stuff. It's a lot of repetitive work that I think doesn't get enough credit for how important it is. How did you find yourselves running these labels?
thanks for the nice words. Actually, well, when I started, one of the first things I kind of did was I went on Instagram. I started to connect with people, other artists, bigger artists, smaller artists, and that kind of like the incentive for me was to find out how this all works because I haven't been in the music industry at all before. So I was just taking the opportunity that lo-fi was a very closed space in that sense. Like even the biggest artists at the time, it was during the pandemic, they had a few million monthly listeners and they had like 2,000 followers on Instagram. So it was really easy to find them and hit them up. And a lot of them were really nice. And they gave me some advice. They answered some of my questions. And that is kind of how I got started. And it was a lot of work to like grind that out and find out the people, talk to them, ask questions, do research. So I started a Discord server at the time that was called Lofinity. Yeah, Lofinity. Just, it was just kind of like a group that started out with a few people that I knew from Instagram, and we wanted to like support each other, by adding the songs to our playlists, and I don't know, just helping us answer questions, share label experiences, which labels are worth the time, which are, not paying you or whatever. And that kind of led to us reaching a group of over 1,000 people in just a few months. And right now this server is kind of a tombstone in a way. It's really inactive, but at the time it was really nice. And it just, I hope it helped a lot of people to kind of like get started, share their stuff, get some feedbacks on new things they're working on, get connections to other artists, labels, collaborations. And yeah, I think I just always had that kind of love for community, which once I was a little bit further down the road with my career, automatically led to me being in that sort of position that I'm in now as an A&R, where I'm talking to a lot of artists all the time, listening to submissions, arranging releases, scheduling other things. We just recently hosted another writing camp here in Prague together with Urban Undergrounds and Mutambo Records. And yeah, I'm just very grateful that I have this experience, kind of like both sided, like I know both sides of the coin. I know the artist side from when I started, and I mean, obviously I still make music as an artist, but I also know the label side. So combine these things and it really gives you like a unique perspective on the whole genre and the music industry, that at least the little tiny corner that we're operating in, that makes it very unique for me to be able to talk to all the artists and other labels in a different way, because I know both sides of the coin, basically.
Definitely. No, I can relate to that to some effect, right? It's like I picked up a full-time playlisting gig on behalf of Lazy Pug, and I did so specifically with intent to go undercover and see what happens on the opposite end of the playlist submission sides. Like you have a song, you're trying to get some traction to, and you're like, why isn't this getting accepted? So then you start to work for the side that is, quote unquote, gatekeeping the plays, and figure out exactly, what it is that makes songs get accepted, what it is that playlisters are looking for. So it's like I like that you took the same approach that I did, which was I want to understand more about what the people who would work in tandem with me would do. So why not try their job? You sound well cut out for it, but I wanted to ask specifically what you meant about doing the grind. So when you said speaking with artists, grinding, building this community, what kind of techniques did you have to employ in order to build the community? Like when I don't want to make the question too complicated, right? It's like when you were in this process before you had your community to now after having made it and having it kind of serve its purpose. How did you get there? How did you navigate that?
I mean, that's a tricky question, and I mean, the answer can be very simple if I want it to be. I'm just kind of like thinking in the best way to explain this, because for me as a person in my whole life, I've always been really social, and I've also always found it easy to connect with people, make friends. I mean, mostly, of course, that applies to the real life, to the real world. But even though online, it's kind of the same thing at the end of the day. Um, so I think having some sort of affinity for social opportunities, or just like enjoying speaking to random people on the internet, if that doesn't come to you naturally, I think it is a lot harder for someone to do that, to like build those connections online. But basically, I would say any business you do, one of the most important things is connections, knowing people. And since that came to me quite naturally from just the way I am, it was easy for me to make connections online. I just enjoy speaking to people and talking to them, getting to know their stories and how they did it, how they made it. I was listening to the Chilled Samples podcast, for example, that I'm sure a lot of people know. And there I got some insights into some people, like how they made it in the lo-fi world, how they came up. And I'm grateful that some of these people that I was listening to while I was grinding are now my friends. So yeah, it's been a very, how do you say, like, I've been really blessed to be involved with all of this. But yeah, I mean, to come back to the original point of your question, what is the grind? For me, the grind was just, finding out people, like finding out labels, finding things on Instagram, and then kind of like researching their websites, their Instagrams, their Spotify's, which people they're connected to, and just getting a sort of better understanding of how this whole bubble works, how people get placements on Apple Music, on Spotify, how people build their playlists, that kind of sort of thing, how Spotify works, how to make your own playlist and all that sort of stuff. And I was just talking to all the artists, and I've met many, 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 many nice people along the road. And what I found very nice and helpful was that basically everyone you spoke to was really nice, and they were always open and telling you about their experience. Nobody was kind of gatekeeping or trying to hide everything like it might be the case in other genres in the music scene.
I have noticed that about the lo-fi guests that we've had in particular, which is not to bag on any other genres, but lo-fi in particular is such a distinctly it's a community that is based in the internet as opposed to like meeting in real life is what I found on average, right? It's like,
Yeah.
for example, to compare it to nightlife, right? Like it's like I work weekends, like I go out to clubs and I pursue opportunities to DJ, and it's a lot of meeting people in person. It's like you said, there is the social aspect of it, the affinity for talking to other people really cannot be understated. There is no way around it. Like you need friends in this industry. You need to be able to get to know people and connect as a way to not only to give yourself the satisfaction of like having like a rich social life, but also to like have these people who will be nice and offer you opportunities you wouldn't otherwise have access to, right? So I am really I really understand where you're coming from with this idea of building a think tank on Discord, basically to help each other get ahead, and having that take off, learning to strategize from other people and stuff like that. In other words, what I wanted to specifically get to the root of, though, I think, is that when you are befriending these artists, do you have like a certain protocol that you go about, like what makes a person worth getting to know? And once you get to know them, what do you think is the proper way to like discourse with them and get them involved with you?
I mean, that's kind of a very surgical approach, and I'm not entirely sure if I can answer this the right way, because for me, of course, when you're grinding and you want to make connections, you want to get to know the scene, you want to be involved somehow, you of course have to make some connections. So there is definitely, without denial, a business motivation behind it. But regardless of that, I think one of the most important things when making connections is the genuine approach. I would never just message a person because I'm solely interested in getting something out of them. And I think that is one of the biggest mistakes that people make that are trying to make it. They only think about themselves, they never think about the other person. And when you reach out to a big artist, a lot of people are reaching out to them. I mean, in the lo-fi scene, it's still fairly small, but there are still a lot of people that are trying to make it, that are reaching out to them. And what I would recommend is think about what value can you provide for that person that makes you stand out of the crowd. Are you maybe great with certain instruments that you can provide to them that they are not able to do? And then again, the respectful way to do is, all right, like, there is an artist, I really like his music. I mean, you should never work or try to approach a guy that you want to work with if you don't even like their music. But let's assume there's a person, he's a great guitarist and you want to work with them, and you are really good at the piano, so you are kind of matching him in sort of ways that he wouldn't be able to do without you. But if you are just messaging an artist that is very well known for just being a good producer, but you ask him to play saxophone on your track, that is kind of disrespectful in a way, because you don't, like, you're asking him to work with you. You have just started, he's been established in the scene for years, and you don't even know what his profession is. In a way, you don't even know what he's good at. So I just think, in general, if somebody's trying to do that, the most important thing is understanding who you're talking to, being respectful, offering value, and at the end of the day, it's also about having fun. Like, there is so many artists out there that I've been talking to the beginning, when I started making lo-fi. Like, there are some artists that come to mind right now that I've messaged within the first month of me starting my career as a lo-fi artist, that to this day I have never worked with them, but still we have some genuine connection, and we have some nice chats every now and then, reacting to each other's stories, or talking about random stuff whenever it comes up. And that's totally fine for me. I'm just happy that they have a good life, I have a good life, and I'm just happy to chat and share that kind of, yeah, joy, and just be involved in the scene. And some of these people are people that I know that I would probably never ever work with, just because we sort of do the same thing. And so it wouldn't even be nice to have a collaboration, because we would fill the same box or the same, yeah, area.
Sure. I mean, I love the answer to that question because I think it perfectly encapsulates exactly what people do wrong, which is like, to cold DM strangers and be like, let's work, fire emojis, having done no back end work of seeing what the artist that they're contacting is about, having made no effort to get to know them on a personal level, that sort of thing. Right. And so the reason I asked it in such a way is because, like, I'm an introvert by nature. And I think my people might not assume that due to my online presence and, the fact that I'm like here hosting a podcast and whatnot. But it's like, I feel like almost a sort of envy towards people who are naturally like socially inclined for fun, because I'm like, I wish that I had this intrinsic motivation to go out and befriend people. In my case, right, I find myself as an introvert having to justify to myself, like, what is the purpose of making friends in the industry, right? And I was like, outside of just having friends, community, like supporters and people that you like and have fun with. Like I also like to convince other introverts of the necessity of building these social connections, even if it puts them out of their comfort zone. Does that make sense?
For
So I
sure.
don't
I
I
mean, out of the comfort zone. Sorry, I just wanted to say, out of the comfort zone is where we grow, And of course, also, I had to move out of my comfort zone, even though these kind of things come to me more naturally. But yeah, sorry. Go ahead.
No, that was the crux of it, right? It's like for me, it's like it's been a great learning experience, right? Is like learning again. You like we all, it's like you mentioned, the lo-fi community kind of exploded during the pandemic when we're all locked inside and people pursue these connections online because that in-person option isn't available, right? For me, having to relearn how to like go out and socialize, not just in like a business sense, but like in a personal friendship sense, I feel like is what really started to take things in a noticeable direction. And it went from being this like lonely endeavor to suddenly now there's a family behind it. Um, I guess I wanted to know more about your lo-fi family, right? Like what inspired you, or I guess you already kind of talked about what inspired you to put together this Discord server. What did you guys proceed to do there to help each other?
Like I mentioned before, it was probably within my first 1 or 2 years of being part of the lo-fi community, where this server just was existing to help other people that have started with their lo-fi career, to like warn them if they have questions about, I don't know, labels or whatever, just warn them or give them advice on who to work with or where to start or which plugins to use, or just give them the opportunity to find other people to work with, other people that may play an instrument that they don't, and then they could kind of like come together and create something new. And that was kind of the whole purpose of it. It was just basically there to, yeah, just give people a ground where they could work together, find other people that do the same thing, that share a passion essentially, and kind of like serve as an entry ticket to this whole scene in a way. I mean, like I said before, this place is now pretty dead and nobody's using it anymore, but I still have like a fond memory of it for what it was at the time. And I know that now the scene has also become a bit more closed off because there's more and more people that are trying to get involved with the scene, and it's become a little bit less personal and less genuine, I would say, when people found out that you could make a lot of money with this. But yeah, the people that have been in the scene for a few years now, or even longer, they are kind of connected now, and it's a little bit more closed off, at least from my perspective, I would say.
I think it's natural probably to have you guys with experience and like long histories kind of form like a little subgroup within a bigger group, especially as you start to get more and more new heads, more unfamiliar faces. Thank you for the explanation, right? It's because like what I'm trying to do is mentally summarize what you've described to me, and it sounds like you built like a resource library. It's like whatever it is that you need to get started here, whether that is track feedback, whether it's collaborators, whether it's like how do I submit to a label. That's the kind of information that I like to make available to people, even like on behalf of the show, for example. So I thank you for breaking that down in a possibly entirely repetitive question that I asked.
No
Let's
problem.
redirect.
I mean, yeah.
Go ahead.
No, I just wanted to say no problem, and I'm happy that I could help with that. One thing that I forgot to mention is that we even had like a spreadsheet with all the labels that exist, like what playlists they have, like which artists are like, I don't know, A&Rs or owners of the label that you could talk to if you wanted to, and a way to submit and what kind of style they're looking for. So,
I don't know if
yeah,
there are many of these quote unquote the spreadsheets going around, but you're not the first to guess to have mentioned the spreadsheet that got circulated specifically. That was like the master list of label references. So it's kind of funny to hear, like about people sharing this. I hesitate to call it insider knowledge because I'm sure anybody who was willing to do the research could find it too. But it's just like
sure.
someone took the time to collate this whole thing and put it all together just to help their friends out, and I think that's so cool.
Well, thank you. That was kind of the reason for me to create this sheet. I don't know if people still use it. It hasn't been updated in probably 2 years. Um, I don't know if it's still going around and people are, taking any noticeable notes from it. I don't know if even probably some of these submissions or whatever things are outdated. But if people are actually still using it, I might actually try to look back into it and update it and see if that yeah, if that could be helpful for anyone. So thanks for the reminder. I wasn't even aware people would still be using that.
Again, like I can't say for certain that it's the same spreadsheet, but the concept itself of like a
Yeah.
group of friends circulating this spreadsheet of information was what caught my ear. Basically, I was like, that sounds familiar.
Yeah.
I want to redirect a little bit, Nico. Like we talked a lot about like the online community and your involvement there. I want to know a little bit more about your journey personally, right? So it's like we talked about when you started with lo-fi, but did you have musical experience prior to that?
Well, in some sort of way, I definitely did. I was always very fond of music in general, ever since I was young. And because my mom wasn't very musical, but she kind of like wanted me to have access to it, she was playing me a lot of music because she couldn't, or at least she didn't like to sing for herself. So she always played me a lot of music. And so growing up, I was always really involved with music. I learned the flute in school, in elementary school for a while. It's kind of like a thing that everyone does, then you drop it. Um, but later on, I started learning the trumpet, which after a few years I had dropped as well because, you're a teenager, girls get interesting. A lot of other things become more important than playing an old trumpet. So, yeah, I kind of dropped it. But then I got involved with the band. I was the lead singer of the band for a few, yeah, I don't know, like 2 years maybe or something. We were like playing some gigs and we were even writing our own songs. But then, other things got more important. I was more involved with kind of like the work life, and I was more interested in having my own business and starting that. So after a few years down the road, I decided I wanted to learn how to make my own music, maybe going back to writing songs and stuff. So I figured I had to learn how to produce music. So I just started learning how to make beats on YouTube, which is probably about 7 years ago, I think, 7, 8 years ago, probably something like that. Yeah, probably like 8 years actually. Yeah, I just turned 29. I think I started when I was 21. So yeah, probably 8 years actually at this point. That's crazy. Wow. I didn't think it was that long. But yeah, then after that, I kind of got involved with the restaurant business, and I started my own restaurant with my former boss at the time where I was working, and that consumed a lot of my time. And basically, yeah, I became the manager and part owner of a restaurant when I was 23, and that took a lot of time and effort. And after a few months, the first lockdown came and it shut down our complete business. We had just started, just opened up. Everything was kind of like starting to come up, and we were starting to establish everything. Then lockdown number one came. And between lockdown number one and lockdown number two, everything was open. And we had like a few hundred guests every day. And I was just working every day from waking up, working, going to bed, like for 6 months straight. And when lockdown number two came, that kind of like dropped me hard out of the clouds, so to speak. I just kind of like fell to the ground. I was like, shit, what the fuck just happened? That wow, I think I was really close to burning out. I felt like I was drowning for weeks, and then the lockdown two kind of saved me. And that got me thinking. I was like, wow, this is not how you imagined your life to be. You're 24, and that's not what you want. So I I don't know. I just took a few days to think about my life, and I asked myself if anything was possible, what would I want to do? And it was pretty quick that I came to the assumption that I wanted to make music and just live off making music. So I was just starting to figure out how to upload your own songs, how to make money from your own music. All this kind of stuff just happened during lockdown. I just started to grind it, just researching, started to make my first project. I released my first album a few months later, and then all of this started to kind of like come together and compile, and I got to know new people and artists. And yeah, a few years down the road, I'm here. This is my new life. I have a lot of amazing friends in this scene. I'm involved as an artist, as a label A&R and label manager, and I'm really beyond grateful that I'm able to do this. And I know, I don't know, it's this kind of magical moment where you're like, okay, like what I want to do with my life. You set your mind to it. You put everything on one card. That's, oh, I don't know. That's a German saying. You put everything on one, just like in the casino. All your bets goes on one. All your bets go on one number. And I did that, and I just put everything I had to that. I left the restaurant. I got a part-time job so I could pay my rent and pay some food, and all my free time would go into this project. And a few years later, I had the opportunity, like 2.5 years later, I had the opportunity to work with No Spirit and to work on the label. And I packed my bags. I left Germany. I moved to Czech Republic, to Prague, and we started working together on this project. And I wasn't making that much money at the time, but I had some money saved, and I knew I could kind of like cover a few months with what I was making and what I had saved, to like grind more and get a bigger income. And it worked out. I took a risk. It worked. I moved to a new country. I moved to a new city, and it worked out. And now I'm here. That's kind of the story.
I that story resonates with me on a deeply personal level, right? So, like for example, I used to work in the health and fitness industry. I was a former pre-med student when lockdown hit, and instead of making lo-fi like I should have been, I was studying for the MCAT. That career path nearly drove me to insanity, and likewise, so did working in the health industry. It's like you mentioned being in the restaurant business, working nonstop, and like approaching this point of feeling like you're drowning, right? Like when
Yeah.
I was managing a physical therapy clinic at the time, and like I was
Wow,
billing
that's impressive.
insurance. What was that?
I said that's impressive.
I mean, I wish I could say it was impressive. I was barely holding things together. It was the insurance billing is one of the most like mind-numbingly awful jobs that I wouldn't wish it on my worst enemy. Like not to redirect and make things about me, but right. But it's like I get it. It's like sometimes the work is too much work, and you realize that you're not getting any fulfillment out of what you're doing, and it's all for a paycheck. And you've got to like step back and be like, would I be satisfied with what I'm doing if I died right now? Like could I look back and say I was happy about how I spent my time?
Yeah, and
So
these are the pivotal moments that sometimes we have to go through. We have to really face this crazy moments in our life that make us realize what we truly want to in order to gather the strength and the conviction to like pursue that actual path that we want to pursue.
dude, I love it. Yeah. And so you come out of that pivotal moment like, all right, I'm willing to put it all on one card, so to speak, take a gamble. And like I feel a similarity, right? Like for example, I'm also 29. I also quit a job that was very busy to pursue music, took a massive hit to the income in order to do so, and am enjoying myself so much more as a result. And so I would love for other people to see that something like that is possible. Um, if you don't mind me
Certainly is.
changing this up, go ahead.
No, I just said it certainly is possible. Certainly is. I
Yeah.
mean, it really depends what you want to do. And I think to be really honest, I think when we say it's possible, it is possible. But if you don't have the emotional power, I would say, and the conviction to do it, it's really hard. It's not an easy path. It's not like a dream. It's not like everything falls into place and now magically you have the best life. It is a lot of work. It takes a lot of courage and mental strength. And I think you only get that if you pursue something that you really like and that you really enjoy. And if you find that, I think anyone can do it, I guess. But yeah, if it's something that you're not enjoying enough, or it's just like sort of like a lush dream you're having about how nice it would be to be an artist, like you really need to want that. I
Right.
don't know. I just wanted to. I feel like that has had to be emphasized in a way.
No, no, most definitely. I don't want to give the impression that it's like everyone should quit their day job and become an artist. It's more just like it's like I like to see success stories, right? Like a
Yes.
person with a dream who is committed to making it happen, who endures the struggle and pops out on the other side having, not only survived but thrived. That's what we're trying to get here. Yeah, please do not quit your day job unless you are 100% invested in music.
No, I
Um,
mean, I kind of had this experience because I wanted to have the restaurant, and I found a way to make it possible, but it didn't fulfill me at all. It just kind of destroyed me from the inside. So I guess that's what I was trying to say is, I mean, I could still do the restaurant thing, but I would probably be dead inside. So what I was trying to say is that you can do anything you want if you have, and you just need these kind of like, you need that, how do you say, you need the strength to like follow through and keep going. And I think you only get that if the thing you're pursuing is something that you're really passionate about. Then it just comes naturally to you to like invest more than you would invest in your job and just go beyond what you can or would usually do.
100%. Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I want to dig a little bit more into specifically like what Odd Panda represents. So like what I mean by that question is like how would you, if you had to describe your brand, what kind of music do you make and how do you make it?
That's a tricky question. I feel a lot of people could probably answer that for themselves better than I can. Maybe I'm wrong, but I just kind of make what I like. And over the past years, I've had a lot of self-doubt if I'm good enough or if I can do it or if my music's good enough because I'm, so to speak, just a producer. I'm not really great at playing any specific instrument. I mean, I can play around on the piano a little bit. I can like play, some very basic bass lines on a bass guitar. But these days, I just prefer to work with people that I have a great personal connection with and that are very good at something that I'm not good at, whatever that might be, like a trumpet, guitar, piano. You kind of like over time, you build your arsenal of friends and musicians that you just work with in a efficient and joyful way. And that has really been a pivotal moment for me, I think, over the course of the last year or two, really only working on songs that I enjoy, that I really can stand behind from my personal feeling, and with people that I just compliment with naturally in a very easy way. That I don't know if that answers your question, but that's
I'm
all
I'm
I have to say for now.
I'm gonna dig a little bit deeper into the technical stuff if you're willing to discuss it, but I do think that's a good answer,
Sure.
right? 'Cause some people they're like, I make this niche genre and that is what I represent, right? But I like
Yeah.
I'm here for more of like this idea of music being a dynamic thing that is constantly changing that reflects like a mood and an emotional state that we're going through, right? It's like
Yeah.
I am rarely ever experiencing the same mood back to back in production sessions. So each time I go in, it's like I
Likewise.
like to, show the evolution of the quote unquote like emotional human experience by changing things up. I like to mix it up. I like to make different music every time. You know what I mean? So I get
Totally.
it. And you
Yeah.
you describe this process of like identifying people who have these skills that maybe you don't quite have dialed down to their level. And so you have good history with them, you recruit them, and you build something magical together that you couldn't do independently of each other, is what it sounds like.
Kind of, yeah. And I mean, maybe they could do it without me. I don't know. I certainly couldn't do it without them. And I'm grateful I'm able to work with them. And that's just, I don't know, it just gives me the most joy to work with people that I have a good vibe with, and where you also work together well in on a musical level. There might be people that you're totally not good friends with, but you just have a completely different taste and it just doesn't work out well. So yeah, I mean, I just really love producing. I really enjoy making drums. It's probably my favorite thing to do, and making drums and producing songs, arranging songs. I think that's kind of my specialty when it comes to making music. And yeah, just I don't know. I just feel like I work the best if I work on something that I genuinely like. So I've kind of like narrowed it down to only working on things that I really like. And there are some people that I have in my circle where I know that we can most definitely 9 out of 10 times we come up with something that both of us like, and it will be, a great result.
It's a good focus and criteria, right? Like because I've talked to people who categorize music sometimes into there's business and there's pleasure, right? Like I work on these songs for my job and I work on these songs for my personal satisfaction. So I think you having narrowed it down to just like I'm gonna work on what I like exclusively probably makes your job a whole lot more fun than people who have to work on commercial projects that they might not necessarily be excited about.
I mean, I think it's always a mixture of both, as you said. And I mean, there's certainly sometimes stuff that I'm working on that I wouldn't be working on if I hadn't the opportunity to do it from a commercial or business perspective. But that doesn't mean that it can't be fun. It can still be fun.
Okay, so in other words, there's still an awareness of something that constitutes a good strategy, a good business opportunity that you can enjoy while you're doing it, but maybe pursuing something outside of your typical wheelhouse for for the opportunity that it provides. Am I understanding you correctly?
I, I think so. I think so. I also feel like I've narrowed it down at this point to where I know what I can do that works, and that I also like that works in a sort of marketing wise way, but I also enjoy. And over the years, I've just started to care less about it because some of the things that I thought would work really well didn't work at all, and some of the things that I thought were not working at all worked the best. So yeah, like I said, I'm just mostly trying to stay within some certain parameters that I know are going to work. But inside of that, freedom is yours. I just do whatever comes up,
Can I
and
ask a little
that has
bit
worked.
about what you just said? I really liked. I tried some things I thought would work that didn't, and tried some things I didn't think would work that did. Could you perhaps give me some examples of that?
I mean, there were just some songs that I personally thought were some of the best songs I had ever made at the time, and then they end up being one of the songs in your discography that nobody ever notices, and that just kind of like got washed down the drain. Whereas there are some songs that I was just kind of involved out of some business that I thought was good, or something that just has been started and was there, and I pushed through to finish it just so it's finished. And I wasn't necessarily super proud of it, and then it turns out to be one of my most successful songs. I mean, I don't know if that breaks it down for you enough, but that's kind of the experience I had, where I had a lot of messages like people saying, "Oh, wow, this song is so nice," or it got several editorial playlists, whatever. And yeah,
No,
that's
it
kind of
absolutely does
it.
break it down. I have been personally surprised. It's like I have the music that I like to make, and I have more experimental stuff that I didn't necessarily dislike making, but it wasn't typically what I enjoy making. And I have had weird experiences where the stuff that I poured my heart into went unnoticed, and something that I tried just for fun, just messing around, took off in a weird direction. So I
Yeah.
I get it. Let's peek under the hood a little bit if you're open to it. What kind of DAWs are you using to make these tracks with? What does your workflow look like? Do you have any like must-have VSTs that you use in project?
So I work with FL Studio. I know it receives a lot of negative feedback, but I'm really a big fan. It's just the first thing that kind of came to me, and I don't know. I feel like this might sound a bit weird, but I feel like the DAWs are kind of related to, in a way, like you could see it as a sort of Harry Potter thing. It's like where you get kind of like when you start out, the house chooses you, and I feel like it's the same thing with the DAW. The DAW chooses you, and at like a few years down the road, it kind of makes sense why you are with that DAW. I feel like most people that are mostly focused on producing and stuff like that, a lot of them, or drums, a lot of them end up working with FL Studio. And people that have, I don't know, more of a creative experimental approach usually tend to work within Ableton. And then there are the people that either went to some sort of musical university or something. They usually work with Logic because that's standard there, so they kind of stick with that. Um, I don't know. That's kind of like my how do you say, my view on things in that realm.
I love the comparison to the Harry Potter sorting houses because I am not a DAW elitist, right? But I was born and raised on Ableton. I don't see that ever changing. And I'm curious, just as like for fun thing, right? So like if the DAWs represent the houses in Harry Potter where one could be sorted into, which one is a FL Studio? Are you like a Slytherin, Ravenclaw, Gryffindor? Like which house does that represent?
Ooh, that's a tough question. I'm not sure if I can answer that.
I'd say
Uh,
Pro Tools for me is an easy Slytherin right there.
yeah, absolutely. Like people that produce in Pro Tools, that's just, absolutely ridiculous.
Psychopathy.
I
I
mean,
hate it.
shout outs to everyone that can do it, but if you can produce in Slytherin, you're not normal. Like that's just some next level shit. But yeah, I don't know. I feel like I don't know. Maybe actually Logic would be Gryffindor. I don't know. Maybe not.
Call it just a for fun question, right? It's like I wanna think that Ableton is like the smart Ravenclaw people, but we're probably the
Probably.
Hufflepuff guys. Um, anyways,
Maybe.
to bring it back to the workflow a little bit, you talk
Yeah.
about drums, and that's what drew you to FL Studio, right? Like, what is it about FL Studio drums that you think calls to people, and how do you, like, how do you proceed to take an idea and turn it into a project?
What I really like about FL Studio is the drum sequencer, so to speak. It's called the channel rack. It's this kind of thing that looks like a sequencer, but it also has like you can also go in MIDI and edit it in MIDI, but you can also just click it in with the sequencer steps. It's I don't know if you've ever seen FL Studio, but it's called yeah. It's you have these kind of like sequencer steps, but then you can also edit them in a MIDI field.
I'm familiar with it, and I found it so restrictive, which is why I'm enamored by people who like it. I like to go off grid and do unusual chops and stuff. And so when I use the
Yeah,
step sequencer, I was like, where are my triplets? Like, why
the
can't I
channel
go
rack.
into
Yeah, yeah.
64ths of a beat?
Yeah, you can. I mean, the thing is, for me, is I think it's partly because I've been using FL Studio, but if you play me a beat, I could probably recreate it in the channel rack without listening to what I do, just from the visual, like audio to vision kind of thing.
That's an impressive skill. Have you ever seen video content of people? They're like, I'm recreating this Skrillex song without listening to it, and they will just try and build a project out without any audio feedback. Now, usually it
No, I'm
sounds like
not
hot
doing that.
garbage.
Sounds
It's
fun. Yeah,
purely an entertainment category, mostly just to
yeah,
see like your perception of what you think you're doing versus what you're actually doing is
yeah.
what it sounds like to me when you describe it. You're actually doing it well as opposed to
Well,
doing it
I
via
can
troll.
say how it sounds, because like I cannot choose samples based on not hearing it. But just from a rhythmical standpoint, I could probably build it without hearing it just because I'm so familiar with the visual aspect of making drums. So if I have an idea of the drums, I can just put it down in the channel rack within a few seconds. And then I just go into the MIDI and adjust the MIDI to if I wanted triplets or whatever. I do it in there because like building hi-hats in MIDI is for me, it's just very natural and very easy to do, probably because of just what I'm used to. And I just know exactly like where to place it off grid to get a certain groove going, if that makes any sense.
It
So,
does. I think it would take like a certain level of familiarity with both like drum
sure,
groove and the like the user interface itself to be able to pull
sure.
something like that off. Because
I mean,
even go ahead.
sorry.
I was just gonna say, even now, I think that I understand what I'm building, but then I'll play it back and be like, "Oh, that wasn't how it sounded in my head." So in other words, I'm impressed by your having absorbed this channel rack and MIDI editor breakdown so well that you can visually map out beats cleanly.
Yeah, I don't know. It's just, thanks. It's just I don't know. It just kind of like came along over the years. I wouldn't be able to do what I do in Ableton or in Logic. If you take FL Studio away from me, I'm like a naked rat on the street. It's that's just my tool. That's what I use, and that's how I do what I do. and if I don't have it, then I'm limited.
100% feel that. I dread the moment that I collaborate with somebody and they want to send me an FL project. I was like, you're gonna have to cut it to stems because I wouldn't even know where to begin. Um,
Yeah, fair.
what let's say you get like a saucy drum pattern down that you are really excited about. What comes next?
Well, I think what I've learned over the years is sample selection is really the key to everything. So a lot of people always think, oh yeah, like if I just had this person's like mixing chain or like this person's whatever effect chain or whatever, I would be it would be so nice. But honestly, the sample selection and the way you're building things is way more important than the processing. And I found that to be particularly true over the years because even before I process things, it sounds a lot better unprocessed than my old tracks processed. And I think that's exactly kind of like proving the point. But yeah, once you've got that down, I just recently, like just a few months ago, or maybe even just a few weeks ago, I started saving my, because I just switched to the MacBook like half a year or 9 months ago. I just switched to my MacBook from a PC, and I started saving effect channels, effect racks, that I put for drum processing or whatever, or guitars or piano, whatever. I started saving that. Like all the years in the past, what every new track I made, I would just do everything from scratch. And that saves me so much time, and it just gives me a more unique and consistent sound across my music. But also, I feel like now I was able to really perfect that and put it to a level that I'm, that kind of like I know what I have, I know what I'm doing. Everything has its purpose. It's not just some random effects that I put together. It has it has very distinct purpose, and also it just gives me a starting point because I can just adjust the settings on this channel, on this effect channel that I have, and just make it work for whatever I need to make it work for. And I think it just saves a lot of time for me at the end of the day. So that's kind of the next step that comes along.
I like it. Super relevant workflow step is like, like for example, I use templates and I use templates that I built, right? It's like you spend, 6 months, a year, whatever, however long it takes to build your first track ever. And then, obviously you see like evolution and iterations of the template. But like for me, there's nothing more paralyzing creatively than staring at a completely blank project. I'm just like, I don't even know where to begin. So like
Yeah.
having a templates that have all of my go-to sounds, all of my racks, all of my things to get creative ideas out there quickly is like something I can't possibly recommend enough to people who are looking to start mass producing music. And I say that it sounds kind of soulless that way, but it's like if you want to make a lot of music, you have to build systems that will let you do it efficiently. And that's what it sounds like you've done.
Yeah, and I wouldn't call it soulless at all. I mean, I can understand why someone would think that, but at the end of the day, if you're driving to work, you're always taking the same route. If you're showering, you're always showering in the same order. It's just very natural and human. And why would I, which I did for several years, just open the same plugins, do the same thing over and over again. Why would I do it if I can just save it and then tweak what I need to tweak in order to match it to what I'm making? It just saves me so much time. And that's not soulless at all. It just saves time because you're just, but I did it at a point where I was like super convinced of what I was doing, where I just knew what I was doing. I think if you do that early on, it could be good, but you should probably reconsider your templates every now and then because I think it limits your evolution if you only work from a template all the time and you never think outside of the box, or you never, like, if you do something else, then you shouldn't use the same template maybe, or I don't know, maybe you know what I mean, but I feel
No, no,
that's an important thing to mention.
so like for example, like in electronic music, people can be very elitist about certain genres, right? Like if you make bass music versus house music, you would be making a mistake to think the same people are going to enjoy both of them all the time, right? So it's
Yeah,
like what you said about, not being too reliant upon the same template, absolutely crucial right there. It's like I I will start with the template that most fits the idea that I'm shooting for, but it'll be a completely different template compared, like between genres. And I think that's an important thing to note, is that like as you build these efficiency resources, right, it helps to tailor them to specific moods, specific genres, or specific things. So that way, if you go into it knowing that like, hey, I'm going to make a sad, sleepy beat, you're not pulling out your like aggressive, obnoxious, angry dubstep template. You know what I
Exactly.
mean? So
Exactly. But I mean, it depends as well on what it is, because, for example, I do also mastering commissions for people. I do the mastering for our labels. I think at this point, I've probably, including my own music, I've probably mastered over 400 lo-fi beats, maybe 500 lo-fi beats, and I probably had over 100 editorials on the tracks that I mastered, or even more. I don't know. So there's some certain experience to that. That's why I was emphasizing it. Um, but funnily enough, the better I get at mastering, the more I find myself doing the same things over and over again, or using the same chain. But the interesting and important part is not like, people always want to know, like I said it before, they want to know like the secret plugin or that. Of course, there are some plugins that I've found over time that are really, enhancing my workflow. But still, it is what you do with the plugin that makes a difference. And I mean, I could explain that, or I could go more into depth. When people ask me about it, I always feel it's very hard for me to answer that question, because I just I hear it because of my experience, and you cannot, that's something you need to get yourself. I mean, I cannot tell you my experience and then you have it. You need to make that experience yourself. And I feel, just from me also not working with templates for a long time, I got that experience as well. Or like trying to copy certain sounds or certain styles, or getting a specific tone or a specific sound right, just messing around and kind of like pushing aside your knowledge and your ego, and just listening to what you're doing, closing your eyes, just listening to what affects what, and just kind of approaching it from a very learn oriented perspective. It really helped me to understand what's going on. Maybe I wouldn't be able to perfectly explain how a compressor works. I think I could probably do a decent job explaining it in some way, but I just know what I need to do to get the sound that I want to get. And the more I do it, the better I can explain it to others. But at the end of the day, it's just that experience. Like, I hear something, and within a few seconds, I know exactly what's wrong, and I know exactly what I need to do to make it sound better. And that's just from the experience. And that's not something that you can just give to someone like that.
No, I understand. I think the crux of what you've explained right here is kind of like, for your clientele, are they interested in the product or the education, right? So it's like what it sounds like to me, if I may be so bold as to summarize, is that you're saying that you're not necessarily there to provide an education on mastering. I couldn't tell you how I do it because I'm drawing from this intuitive pool of acquired knowledge in my head. I'm giving you a product, right? Versus
Yeah.
the education side would be someone being like, hey, can I shadow you and watch you mix and master, and could you explain why you did that, twisted that knob or turned that level down, or like adjusted that threshold, things like that. And I think,
I enjoy doing that. I enjoy doing that too, and I think it's great to do that, because I think it's the best way to learn. But I mean, I think the kind of point that I wanted to emphasize is because you were asking about my workflow, and I was kind of assuming that people would be interested in that because they want to learn, and that's why I kind of felt like I need to emphasize that. Of course, I can tell you this or I can tell you that, but your experience will make it great, and your own way of finding to make it work in your own way, that's what makes it great, and that's what makes you stand out, not just applying some knowledge that you've heard in a podcast or a YouTube video without thinking about what you're doing.
sure. Well, I think, I consider it like this, right? You have this intuitive knowledge that you draw from, that is, that comes from hard work and figuring things out. But I also reference things that I've heard in any podcast I've ever listened to, right? Like I
Yeah.
ground through like Electronic Dance Money, for example. I ground through the Mixing and Mastering podcast. I ground through or sorry, the mixing podcast. The mastering podcast was its own thing. And like these, these collections of knowledge, like whatever I did happen to retain from it, are things that I will, they manifest in the intuitive pool that I draw from, right? So it's like
100%.
we're not here necessarily to tell people without a doubt this is the way to do things, like you have to do it this way, but we're here to help expand upon that intuitive pool people can draw from.
For sure. That's wonderfully said. Thank you for making it more simple. And that's exactly the thing. Like when I was learning to get better at mixing, I think in the mix, he's probably a lot of people know him. I think it's a great YouTube channel. He does some really great videos of breaking down complicated things very simply in a simplistic way. Also, Streaky, if anyone knows him, he's a mastering engineer, well known, that I found to be very interesting. Once I reached a certain level, it was very interesting to get into his kind of involved with his workflow and his knowledge. Yeah, because it kind of felt like a new step that helped me to get to the next level. But yeah, at the end of the day, it was just also taking their knowledge, their information they shared, and applying it and messing around with it and finding my way to use it in a efficient way that works for me.
No, I've heard tell, this is a terrible thing to say, but I've heard tell that a bad artist steals from one and a good artist steals from many, right? So that's
Yeah,
kind of what
yeah,
we are building something new out of many discrete pieces, the best of everything that we've encountered, rather than trying to rip off or copy one person's workflow. It's like
yeah,
we
totally.
um this has been such a fun interview, Nico. I want to drive things to a close here a little bit. And one thing that I typically ask people as we wrap up is, like, if you could summarize for somebody just starting out, what you think makes the most difference, what you think would give them the best leg up. Like, what's like a piece or two of advice you would give to somebody starting out just now in general about how to make it in this industry?
Whew, that's a tough question. I'm not sure how to say that in a simple way. I think there are many different approaches you can take, but I think one of the advice one advice that I could give is, if you really want to do it, you just do it and you keep doing it until you make it. And you just have to stay open to, to put it in a more simple, graspable way. Let's say you're at the beginning of Route 66, and you want to get to the end of it. You just have to drive the road, you just have to take your car, drive down the road and reach the end. And if you driving and you're always just watching your surroundings and you never focus on your path, you will end up crashing, or something will happen to you and you won't be able to continue. But if you only focus on your road and you never look around, you will never know when you're there. You will just keep going or get stuck somewhere. So I think it's a balance of, like, first of all, you have to focus on your way, you have to focus on your road. What do you want? And you don't have to figure it all out now. Some things will come along the way, and if you find a different route to be more interesting along the way, like, don't be afraid to switch lanes, don't be afraid to take a different route. But the most important thing is focus on what you're doing, and keep your eyes open to something new. Because I know I would say I'm probably quite a disciplined person, and I don't like to break my word. So if I say I'm going to do it, and then I'm not going to do it, I would feel really bad about myself. But sometimes that's exactly an important step, where you've made a promise to yourself at a point where you didn't have the knowledge that you have now, and now you would do it differently. It's okay to break that promise to yourself and adjust it so you can be more successful and work things out in a different way.
That was
That's it.
lovely metaphor. I love the idea of the destination in mind, making sure you stay focused on the path, but not so focused you can't tell when you've passed it. Staying aware of other ways to get to where you intend to go without ever losing the drive to get there in the first place. Yeah, absolutely. Beautiful way to take a really hard question and make it digestible in an artful form. Yeah, incredible. where can people find you? And if you had to direct somebody to like some piece of work that you feel like is most important that they hear from you, what would you tell people to listen to?
Well, you can reach out to me on Instagram, Discord. It's usually always oddpanda_beats. I usually respond to anyone that has a reasonable question, that's not just spamming me with some random shit. I'm always open to chat, answer any questions. And about my music, well, if you want to listen to it, I'm on Spotify, Apple Music, everywhere. You just give it a listen. There's not a specific song, project, or whatever that I would refer to. It's my music is very diverse. Sometimes it's more sleepy, sometimes it's more upbeat. But generally, I would say I tend to do more upbeat and stuff with energy. But yeah, whatever people like, I'm not really specific about it.
Cool. I like that idea of giving people your catalog and being like, it doesn't matter where you pick it up. Like find what speaks to you, and that's our favorite.
Yeah,
Beautiful.
exactly.
Um, Thank you so much for a lovely interview, Nico. It has been so enjoyable getting to know you and pick your brain a little bit. I appreciate your time, and I want to thank you for showing up on the show. We're gonna go ahead and wrap it up here. Any final notes?
Yeah, thank you as well for having me, and thank you for being such a great host, asking great questions, and it was really fun to get to know you as well. And yeah, thanks for having me.
Appreciate it. Thank you.